12:59 at Radio Free America. This is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
And welcome everybody to another edition of our Daily Gun Show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern. We talk about guns for an hour. So we are simulcasting over on gunchannels.com, a community we built going on 6 years ago. That means it's 5-something years old now. And it's a place for people to hang out and collaborate on Second Amendment projects or firearms related content, and to share skills and tools and strategies and answer questions for each other, and to grow and to learn more about this idea of using the new media. And this show is designed to help tie it up every night and be a hedge against the programmed whatever news of the day, the agenda-based news of the day. So we've got a panel discussion or a panel format. People are welcome to join in from the gunchannels.com chat room there. And we have Woods joining us from Washington. Thanks for jumping in.
Thanks for having me, G.
You bet. So we were just chatting off air there. We started a little bit late because I am dragging. I am physically exhausted and my eyes are barely open. And Woods, I think, is in a similar position, but just sent out some links, so we'll see if people join us or not. If they don't, it'll be a short show. If they do, then we'll continue to chat. Again, we try to talk about whatever gun-related stuff. Tuesdays, it's Tuesday, right? We usually talk about Second Amendment issues. It's kind of Second Amendmented out after so many shows today. But we can talk about whatever. So we had chatted a long time ago, is it almost a year ago, about the idea of, actually it was about a year ago, the idea of how to communicate with the antis and have an effective communication by knowing how communication takes place. That's pretty much how to wrap it up. And then with the skill set of knowing how conversations work to better manage or get better results out of a conversation. Was that our goal? Yeah,
that was it. We were doing that ethos, pathos, and logos idea. Yeah. That recognizing those three things in somebody else's argument.
Be down for trying to summarize all that tonight and see if we can get people who are, we don't, is this thing broke? It says there's nobody watching on the side that hates our guns. But although we have like 3 or 4 green lights on the gun channel side, so nope, there's nobody even out there. So if I don't see anybody say anything, we don't, oh, it says it's unlisted. Damn it. That's the problem. Edit video. I posted a bunch of these, right? And if I leave them as public, then what happens? They go out and, become spam. They got 20. No, is it not going to work? Done. Save. So let's see if that worked or not. How do you go back to the video now? Stupid. So yeah, we were unlisted. So we literally were just talking to ourselves all that time. Then we have to say everything over again for the video. All right, so there's one watching. Yeah, I was like, why is there only one person watching, but there's like 3 people on gun channels? I think, were they able to watch it on gun channels? Even though, I mean, it's unlisted, it still shows up, right?
Yeah, I think it's, well, it's the thing that I've got, but maybe I need to refresh was from yesterday's, maybe?
It's got a hamburger, it's got a hamburger roofie and some Nazi lady.
Yeah, it's there now. I just had to refresh.
Poisoning her. So, yeah, so we had a bunch of secrets earlier. A bunch of things were revealed. You don't know about them because you weren't watching. But now we're live, and there's like 6 people watching now all of a sudden. So we don't know if you're out there because it's a YouTube, and they insisted on having it set to unlisted because I had set it to unlisted previously. They kept it that way. So I just switched it to private public. So now there's people watching, and if you're out there watching, say something. Otherwise, we don't know that you're out there. And what's the point of being out there if you're not part of the conversation? You might as well be somewhere else. So we were just chatting about having an effective conversation. I was going to ask, are you down with trying to summarize that tonight, or is that too much?
No, I'm happy to do that. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. There's really three different versions of argument that somebody's going to make. So ethos would be their credibility. So that would be like, I was in the military, or I had my mom's sister was a teacher, so I know about teaching.
So is this like from their so that this is like from their perspective, or is this the place from which they argue from? Like, is this like their motivation for their end of the conversation, or is this simply a strategy that they use in the conversation?
It's usually a strategy, because like Aristotle and those guys, they would argue, they were trying to do the idea of rhetoric, and it was really to win the argument. Whereas I think we need to have a little piece of that, because we don't want to lose the argument. But I think we also need to make sure that, our humanity is coming through, and, we don't win at all costs, because, we're the good guys. We want to actually sway the other argument. We want to change their opinion, not just win the argument. And those are very different ideas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
And then the next one would be pathos, which is, that's where we get the, if you're for guns, you're, for the murder of children or whatever utter nonsense. That's the one that I see that's the most damaging, and it's also the least effective when you're trying to say. That's where we get into the name calling and stuff like that. We're attacking their character, or attacking, my emotions are better than yours, so therefore my argument's better. Whereas when we get into logos, which is logic, we use the actual, dry statistics, and we say, this is true because it's true, and we try to prove the idea that it's true, that argument is in fact true. And then there's much things like ad hominem and stuff like that go into it too. Not sure where to go from there.
So after having described, I guess, the three ways to present an argument or a conversation.
Well, in the rhetoric, it's how to present an argument rather than have a conversation. Having a conversation is something that we could talk about too, because I think, especially our liberty side. Notice how I didn't say pro A2A side. I said the liberty side, because I'm trying to work with that. Is that freedom side? We need to make sure that when we're discussing it, that we're discussing it respectfully on both ends. Even if they don't use respectful language or methodology, we're better using really respectful thing. Like Clover's a great example of that. Or you played the guy earlier, Charlie Cook, who I think is fantastic at that. As examples of, you're saying you're 2A advocacy, but you're not insulting the non-gunners, because the non-gunners, I think, should be our target. In my view, it should be our target. Those people that aren't against guns, but there's not really a big deal to them. Those are the ones that I think we can sway to our side. Hey, Dano.
Hey.
Where are you?
I was listening to a little bit on the outside and to Woods, and I thought it was very interesting. So I thought I'd come in and join the conversation. And I think you broke down the different types of communication very well. I think an ad hominem attack is something that's used quite often, although we don't use that phrase, although that's exactly what it is. And that's when somebody, let's say I come to you with fact A, B, and C, backed up by source X, Y, and Z, which are considered objective sources. And you come back with, well, you're just an ass, or you hate kids, or that's an ad hominem attack. Exactly. And unfortunately, it needs to be stated out there, because that sort of thing happens regularly. And unfortunately, sometimes on both sides. And we need to be careful that we are not falling into that easy trap.
Well, I think we are guilty of doing it, because we get frustrated. I don't think anybody's doing it like in a vindictive way. I think we just get frustrated with the silliness from the other side.
And it's very easy when you're being attacked as not being a decent human being to let your emotions get the best of you and want to defend yourself. I mean, it is only natural, but that's because it's natural doesn't mean it's the best decision.
Right. like in anything, like even in a like actual fight, the calmer you are, the better you're going to be.
Exactly. Because, you know, you're fighting with your scientist brain who's taking in all the facts and trying to make the best decision, rather than your caveman brain, which is just go ape shit.
Right. Win at all costs. Absolutely. We want to stay away from that, because that doesn't sway those non-gunners that might be watching this discussion.
Yeah. And those non-gunners are the only ones that might be swayed.
Right.
So, and the real goal here isn't to have a discussion about arguments or conversation or whatever the lingo is here. Really, we're ideally looking at these tools or these characteristics of a conversation so that we can have more effective or better results from a conversation with an anti. So knowing the structure, knowing the elements or the basic foundations of them, is there something like car salesmanship tips or tricks, or like sociologist tips or tricks, or like maybe prison guards, where, you know, somebody who would, their job would be to read somebody and to understand the way that person is gonna, the most efficient way to get through to that person. So I can think of a bunch of different careers where, for all different kinds of angles, you just need to get past the nitty gritty, like a police detective interviewing somebody. They just have ways of understanding gestures and types where they can just cut right through and get effective communication to that person. Is there some tips or tricks that we can learn as advocates? Maybe, you know, this person's, the way that they're saying things, the words that they're using, the type of attacks or whatever, you know, you parry that, or you verbal judo it to someplace, or you just leave them and you know, is there something like that that we can attack or look at?
Well, I just touching back to what Wood said, I think what he said is important in regards to, by listening to what that other person is saying, tells you, number one, is this person worth my time and effort? Just by how they said it and how they presented it.
I guess, and as soon as I was saying that, I'm thinking, you know, it always depends. If you're in an isolated room with another person and they're weird, like Obnoxious was saying, if they're an ass, is it really a ham on them or whatever? But, you know, if there's somebody who it's just a one-on-one, you know, that's one situation. But most of the time, that conversation is happening in a setting where it's like a whole bunch of other people are paying attention or aware, or maybe it's recorded or something. Mm-hmm. So, you know, the other people that might be witnesses or audience.
And setting is important because I'll just use another example. In a public setting, a person might be motivated because they feel that they might have the support of their peers, i.e. those around them, to take a stance and say certain things that they normally would not ever say.
Like emboldened or obligated? Both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've run into both.
Whatever. I mean, because it emotionally feels good, they feel justified by their so-called peers, or what they feel are their peers, to say certain things that they would never say one-on-one.
Especially the emotional, the yield to emotion, that their emotions are so much better than anybody else's.
Right, because they feel justified, and that's where sociology comes into play. I mean, we see it with, sometimes this is related but unrelated, and that's the issue of Antifa, and the way that they approach issues that they feel are important to them. So we see what how their techniques work and do not work. Sometimes work against them.
I think the best one to go back to what G was saying, to the technique is go into the Socratic method. Quit making statements, start asking questions. Because if you ask the right questions, and if you can either make their argument really, really broad or very, very narrow, you're going to find a hole in it.
I like that. That's a good idea. So instead of coming in with what they're expecting, like, NRA says that you're an idiot or whatever, like they think that we're going to come in with some sort of like NRA themed attack, right? Instead, we just ask them questions like, do you believe that the police should have guns? And do you acknowledge that Trump is the boss of the police? Are you okay with Trump having all the guns? Or are you talking something different? But I mean, I like the idea.
Oh, no, I've done exactly that.
Yeah, you have a well thought out plan of basically leading them down the primrose path, so to speak. I mean, you're asking them questions, but you're leading them down a trail.
Well, not verbal judo to like manhandle them, but for verbal aikido, where you're leading them to let their own momentum and body weight trip them up.
So as I'll just give you a very short, probably inadequate example. So if let's pretend that you're married and you have a child, and I say, oh, what's your child's name? And you tell me it's Susie. And I say, so let's say that Susie is being attacked by some neighbor down the street. You've called 911. Okay. So what are you going to do when you hang up the phone before the police arrives? And you ask them what, and you let them say what they're going to say, and then you take it from there. And what you're leading them to is we know there's a time gap. Whether it's 2 minutes or 20 minutes, there's going to be a time gap in which you can stand there and watch your child be, victimized or not. But that's what you're leading them towards.
Yes, exactly.
And whether as a parent, if that's the kind of parent they want to be, do you consider that a good attribute of a parent is one that would watch their child be victimized, or one that would actually get involved regardless of the harm that might come to you, because you consider that an attribute of a good parent?
I had this argument, this discussion with a pretty leftist teacher. She's a really nice lady. I like the lady, but she's not pro-gun. And she was telling me that, the NRA has bought all of the Republicans. And I said, well, they have 5 million members. Even if every person sent in $5, that's what, 25 million? How many politicians can you buy with 25 million? And if they really were buying politicians, wouldn't they just buy all of them? Are you thinking the Democrats aren't for sale?
Well, those are two things. But number one, they don't say the NRA is 5 million members, and they certainly don't think the NRA only has $25 million. They say the NRA is a shill of the firearms industry, and they'll say that the firearms industry funds the NRA. Now, I think, don't we know what the NRA has as far as money?
Yeah.
Well, I also think, speaking in terms of Woods, she said that she said the NRA is buying it off. You allowed her to jump to the conclusion, and you fell for her bait.
I don't agree.
Because she threw out the conclusion that the NRA is buying off all these politicians, and you jumped to the defense. The defense is not where you want to be.
So by the time, so NRA has about 5 million members, and according to OpenSecrets.org, the NRA spent $5 million in 2017 on lobbying, up from about 1.5 million in the early 2000s. So they've gone from 1.5 million to $5 million. $5 million on lobbying. So that's the number I would use to anyone who suggests that the NRA is anything. It's like, what do they really think $5 million does in DC? And that's lobbying, period. That's not like one guy and then another guy got 5 million, another guy got 5 million, because I wouldn't get up to 5 million. There's 5 million, period. Like, seriously, let's go see how much lobbying gets done each year.
It's definitely a false conclusion, but you're also depending on the individual is how you argue your point. If I'm talking to a fireman, then I want to talk about something that firemen and women in general care about. If I'm talking to a parent, I want to talk about something that parents consider good about. If I'm talking to a teacher, I want to talk about something they generally consider about.
You can give them a little bit of, you can agree to their false premise if you can show them an even worse false premise.
Well, why would we agree to theirs, though? So according to OpenSecrets.org, which is where we got the how much the NRA has there, where'd it go? Where'd it go? Anyway, whatever that 5.1 million in that same year from the same source, all total lobbying. Can anyone care to guess?
I have no idea.
3.42 billion.
Yeah.
So out of the $3.4 billion that was spent on lobbying, the NRA is responsible for 5 million. And if they're going to suggest that, we should be mocking them. I would think a simple meme showing the comparison between 3 billion, which would actually be pretty difficult, and 5 million, which is the same as like 3 million versus 3,000, or I guess it would be 3 to 300,000. I mean, it's a massive difference, and that's billions compared to 5 million, and that's to suggest that there's any influence of the NRA at anything. Anything is ridiculous, other than it's a convenient shill to distract.
Right. And even winning that argument doesn't get you what you really want. That just gets the person to then bring up the next point.
Which is how the system keeps going.
Well, it depends on what angle that person's coming from. It's hard to say, but
I don't know. I mean, what is our goal here? To just get discouraged and suggest that if we come up with a good way to address a conversation and they're just going to come up with something else, I mean, then it's futile. But if we can stop on that, are we allowed to stop on that? And they're going to say the NRA is influential in government. And we can say, well, let's take a second and look at that and put that into scope. 3.4 billion versus 5 million. Let's explain to me. I mean, can't you just stop it there? And what else are you going to tell me that's based on anything other than the NRA has influence in Washington? Because that's not correct. We're not going to agree on that.
I guess it depends on and if you think the person is truly invested in that's the reason the things are the way they are.
I guess so. But again, like you're saying, if this is just a bunch of regurgitated bullet points and they're not even understanding what any of this means, they're not thinking about 3.4 billion versus 5 million. They're just like, those are two numbers I've heard.
Because it already sounds to me like that's a person that's not in the middle, which means we shouldn't be wasting our time talking to them. They're now looking for facts after they've come to the conclusion to justify their conclusion.
Well, but then again, if you're talking to somebody who's casually in the middle and they say the NRA is able to influence the government, and you go, let's take a look, and they go, wow, 3.4 billion versus 5 million. You're right. It's ridiculous to suggest the NRA has.
The natural question would be, oh, that's interesting. Where did you see that?
Yeah, opensecrets.org.
Again, well, walking them down that trail as far as how did they get to that conclusion? I mean, they're the ones that have to justify the point, not me. If they're making that if they're stating a conclusion that the NRA is buying up politicians, really, where did you get that information? I'd like to see it. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, that would be a good point. Hey, Hosh.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Ha 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 ha.
Good work back there.
Hey, look at my green screen, and also I have a
vocoder so I can talk like this.
Wolfman Jack is back.
We're talking about, well, having conversations or having effective conversations with antis.
Oh man.
Yeah. Lighthearted Tuesday conversation.
Yeah. That's a real coffee chat, right?
Yeah, like have a little something to drink, and let's chat about how to have a good conversation.
Well, let's just try to summarize. Where we were before Hosh jumps in here. First, we tried to decide if this person is worth your time talking to, i.e., if they're already at the conclusion that guns are evil and bad. Don't bother wasting your time. Versus the real fight, the real important people are people who actually are don't have a dog in the fight and are actually willing to say, well, I'm not generally don't see why people need them, but I'm willing to listen to your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fight or that's the discussion where it needs to occur.
Sure, absolutely, and those would be the most, I guess, advantageous people to talk to. I have literally talked to people, and I mentioned that I am a gun enthusiast. I like guns, and they're like, "Oh, I don't understand why you need those." I'm like, "Oh, you don't understand why we need those? I mean, you follow the Revolutionary War at all, or how we got to have a country?" And they're like, "No, yeah, I don't really know how that plays into this." And it was just a total dismissal of everything I said. And I was like, "Okay, well, you're obviously just you're just an anti. You're purposely being obtuse." So I was like, okay, I'm out of here. But normally, I'll even engage with completely anti people, largely because I won't ever get into I'll never let it get heated. If you never get into a point where it's like a heated discussion and people walk away like, well, he's just a violent person, or this could turn violent at any time. Not even mention if you're carrying or not, but just as long as you behave in a certain way where you're never a threat or a perceived, oh, he's one of those people, right? And then you can say, everybody goes home at the end of the day and everybody's safe, and there's a lot of people carrying guns all the time, and no big deal. That's usually how I like to handle it. Keep it light and airy as much as possible, unless they're amenable to deeper discussion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the caveats we put on it even in the beginning, because it's all going to depend on the person and what kind of situation you're in and how much of a zealot they are, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's some people that are just absolutely foaming at the mouth crazy, then you're not going to be able to really do anything with them. But I always say it really depends on the platform you're talking to them on. If you're just guy in the street, two people talking, then yeah, that might not bear much fruit, might not be worth your time. But if you're surrounded by other people, I found that often if you come across as the least crazy, then that is helpful for as far as, people taking something away from that. You know what I mean?
I totally agree. The more calm you are, the more rational you seem. And then if they a lot of times will get really wound up. And if you don't go with them on the wound up, and then you're just asking a lot of questions. You can destroy people's arguments a lot of times by asking a lot of questions and making very few statements.
Yeah, that is I think the first item out of my playbook is let everybody give you all the ammo in which you're going to use against them. If they want to keep talking and not have an actual point and just be speaking purely based on emotion, that's fine. You can listen to that all day, and then you can just kind of come back with just a couple pointed comments on, what do you think about this, or what the reality is this, or this is what people are seeing, and you already know they're against firearms, so you can largely treat them that they probably don't know much about the facts and actual firearm use and safety and when they're deployed to protect other people, that kind of stuff. So I always find that really advantageous. Let them just talk.
Well, it seems like that's been the advice from everybody except Gary, who has not chimed in. But everybody's been saying, let the other guy talk. I think that's true. What do they say about listening and talking and mouths and ears? I mean, there's all kinds of sayings about shutting up, basically.
I mean, I can't argue with anything anybody else has said. I think you got to be rational with the whole thing. But you also have to know what you're talking about, too, and act like you know what you're talking about. That you just won't easily be, made upset by somebody just because they disagree with your point of view, because a lot of people, that's what they want. Is right. Say something and get you upset, and you've got to be bigger than that.
Yeah, you could very easily be dragged into the deep end of the pool that you had no intentions on going.
Well, you shouldn't allow the conversation to go that way. You shouldn't allow it to go in a direction that you aren't prepared to talk about. Like if they start asking a bunch of specific questions and looking for a really specific answer.
Show me where it says that somebody
right. If they start prattling on laws in a specific state and such thing, and you're not from that state, or nor does it really matter, keep it high level. Keep it to the point of the morality question. Keep it to the point of understanding where they're coming from, as far as, like, you can always tie it back to a safety concern thing. Like, do you not think that you should be prepared to protect yourself and others? And if they say, no, I can't, it's like, well, do you want other people to be able around to protect you? Well, I do. And it's like, okay, well, you do realize that police officers are at best, on average, 11 to 15 minutes away from a situation. Wouldn't it make sense that you want somebody a little bit closer to be armed and trained to a certain degree, that they might be able to, help you and anybody else out? And largely they don't even want to admit that, right? Like, you've already backed them into a totally logical corner, and the fact they won't admit it, then you could almost just say, it's like, okay, well, I mean, this is a rational thing. People want to be protected, and the fact that we can't even reach common ground on that, this conversation really can't bear any fruit.
That's when they're going to hit you with those ethos arguments, like I love children more than you.
But that's Hush. Before you jumped in here, I gave an example that literally you just kind of walk through case by case by case. You know, if I'm talking to somebody that's a mother, then that mother happens to have a child, and that child is down the block and under attack. And then I start asking, I said, what do you consider the attributes of a good parent? And they give me A, B, C, D. And if they don't happen to mention, you know, keeping an eye out for your kid to keep them out of harm, I mentioned, do you consider that to be an attribute, an important attribute? Which most people would say probably yes.
Right.
Okay. And then you walk them. Now let's say something's bad is happening to little Susie down the block. You call 911, but you know, because you're an adult, that 911 is not going to get there in 5 seconds. It's going to take time. If you're lucky, a couple of minutes. Let's say it only takes 2 minutes. Do you want to be known as the parent that stood there and for 2 minutes watched your child get victimized and did nothing, or the parent that ran to their child's aid and regardless of damage that may come to you, actually did something? What kind of parent do you want to be known as?
So that's an interesting. That's an interesting. I wouldn't take that.
I would leave the parent. What kind of parent do you want to be out?
Yeah.
How does any of that help us? Like, hey, we're having a conversation in any setting. Let's bring it to your kids being in jeopardy and your shitty ability to protect them, and you suck. Like, how can that come out with a positive for us?
Parents prize how they are viewed, how they view themselves, and how others view them.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong, but you're calling them out. Hear me out. You're calling them out at this moment. You're dressing them down at that moment. They can't correct that. But if you had given them positive ways to look at gun ownership, then they might at some point be able to change their ways and look at it positively and turn into a gun owner. But if you shame them immediately, then you've literally kind of burnt that bridge. They may come around, but statistically, I think that is proven to be less likely.
Yeah.
Could you make it more generic? Just a parent?
By the way, I never mentioned a gun.
Yeah, but I think we know.
I just mentioned do something proactively. I mean, there are many things you can do that don't involve a gun that can save the life of a child.
So then
well, what if they don't have a child? So here's just a more practical thing. We're talking about having a conversation with an anti-gunner. What if that anti-gunner is a child themselves, or they're elderly, or they just don't have a child? So all of those three people, your argument that it's going to be based on the parents' somehow connection with the child, it doesn't even work. So is this really the best practical argument to have with everyone?
Example. You can use the same thing for somebody that's married. Are you going to stand there and watch your wife die?
Dude, I have talked to people. Here's another reason why I don't like this concept. Because number one, we live in a country that's getting safer. And if we don't acknowledge that, then don't we all strive for that? So number one, we want a safer country. But actually, guess what? We live in a safer country. Number two, I have listened to people, and I don't go out of my way to find antis, but we've had people in conversations who I don't think were trolling us, who said, that's my time to go. And Dano, when you're talking to somebody whose opinion is, that's my time, that's how fit, that was destiny. Maybe I did something wrong in my life, or that was that person.
And at that point, I accept them.
Okay, but I'm just saying we need to, I think it was Tony Simon said, we need to go 60% in order to have effective conversation. If we go 50% and can't empathize or understand their position, then how can we expect them to understand any of ours? So if we can go up to them and say, well, I don't understand you, I'm not going to be able to have an effective conversation with you, then we're literally telling them we can't have an effective conversation with them because we cannot put our minds around their weird idea that their life doesn't matter. So I'm just saying that I just want.
No, and I think the thing that you should probably do when you sit down to talk with people is not ever to approach the conversation to call them out. If you're calling them out, then you probably already at the point that the conversation has started to devolve into something that's not beneficial, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's why I
want to put them on the spot. You know what I mean?
That very last thing I said, I probably shouldn't have said, which is, and do you consider yourself a good neighbor? Let them come to that conclusion.
Right. You never want to like give them the question of like, putting them on the spot to decide whether they're a good person or not, or whether they're being a good parent, a good neighbor, or whatever. You should just say in non not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not attacking. You're not attacking, but you're not accusing them of something or making them come to a morality choice. You're using this kind of open-ended, wider spectrum for how you talk to them. You say, like, I generally believe that I should be prepared for most situations, and being prepared is actually really easy, and it's fun at the same time. It's one of the best hobbies I've ever been able to experience in my life, and it gives you lots of avenues of not just personal protection, but great enjoyment, great skill, learning, etc. Whatever, you can go in. See, I look at it that way. Like, I try and find, oh, you're an engineer? Look at this great mechanical device. There are many complex versions of this mechanical device, and there's many simple versions of this mechanical device. But even the simple ones deserve respect for how efficient they are in being able to do exactly what they do every time you pull the trigger, right? So you kind of have to, that's why I say let people talk more, because it allows you to tailor in your argument that you're going to make to focus more on what their weaknesses are. Or weakness is the wrong word, but something that is they're more open to.
I like that. Also, I've been trying to get myself to get away from just talking about guns and talking more about liberty and rights rather than just guns.
That's a way to go. The pitfall that you'll find with that is when then they hit you with oh, you think the government's going to come and take your guns? Like that's the inevitable response that you'll eventually get to from that. I found.
Yeah. That's why I just like
hold on. Sorry, I just want to throw the one out there and interrupt Daniel because I'm the host. If they do say that, then we get to say the executive branch of government just usurped the balance of powers by creating an opinion which is being enforced as if it was law, and the Congress did nothing about it except congratulate it. So if they say, oh, are they going to come take your guns? Go, well, that's a great example of our liberty being taken. And you brought up guns. That's an interesting point, because they just did that December 23rd of 2018.
Yeah, and actually the stuff like that, when they hit you with the, that whole argument tact, that's where you can go like, hey, we may not see eye to eye politically, and you're probably not a fan in the person in charge right now. So if you think about it like that, there are multiple people that are doing what he says, and you probably don't agree with that. Would someone that's not really a fan of his be better off if they prepared themselves to be personally responsible? Or do we just want to accept whatever the government throws at us at any one time and just hope for the best? I'm not a fan of hoping for the best. I'd rather be prepared and be optimistic, but be prepared and ready for what may come, because I may not agree politically with the current government, as you also may not.
All right, Dano, we cut you off there. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dano.
That's all right. I lost what I said.
I was jumping in to say how Hosh was saying about, oh crap, I can't remember what I just said. Cut you off for something good though. It was good.
It feels like I'm going back into the Rolodex on the back of my head from all the conversations we've had on this topic from years and years ago. I'm not even looking at the camera. I'm just doing other things. I just put this radio back together while I was saying most of these posts, because I feel like I'm just regurgitating a lot of things I've talked about before.
Well, isn't that what we do sometimes?
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, of course, I become more nuanced in a lot of the things that I think and how I convey them. I think that's true. Wisdom, I guess, in age. We've been doing this for Jesus, how many years now?
Usually. So let's talk about that. Dano's been around since 13, I think. Hosh has certainly been around since 13.
Wasn't I one of the first people on the live streams?
Yes, so that's what I'm talking about. When we started the gun channels, was just a result of a very lively or very used, I don't know what the word would be, like a thriving community on the YouTube chats.
Yeah.
Based on the kind of, I don't know what to call, like the situation that happened in the 13. So in 13, people saw this grassroots resistance to the suggestion of Obama doing exactly what Trump just did. except he did it on a grander scale with more cameras pointed at him, and everyone stopped and stopped what they were doing and resisted it. And then I think there was just I don't know what to call, like the awareness, I guess, that everyone knew that everyone just did something and that we have that power. And then anyway, so this whole conversations that we've been having, that Every Second Matters, is an attempt to keep it going, and these conversations each night are an attempt to keep it going, because there was value in the conversations that we had then, in our awareness and our ability to, I don't know, keep track of what all was happening, and to effort towards linking or what was I trying to say, like, to be a part of all the different stuff that was going on, whether it be something in person, or whether it be something that was happening live, or whether it be getting the word out about some event or some issue. So anyhow, we've seen a lot of things come and go over the freaking 6 years that's been. So you just were saying, like, all the time that we've been chatting, but in that time we've been chatting, can you keep track of how many, I don't know what to call, like, clicks have come and gone, or how many, like, figureheads have come in, been a person in the chats for a while and then left?
Yeah,
and then all the people that have come and gone, how many of them went off to become, like, actual content creators and become
tons,
a whole bunch, right?
Yeah. I always think it's like we learn a little bit when we talk to everybody, particularly people who, some of these content creators have strong personalities and their own thoughts and what they think. And believe it or not, whether we disagree with them vehemently, a lot of the times, we all take a little piece of that, and it affects us personally. And we may change and grow and learn something from that. I know I have, listening to people that I generally disagree with. Oh, I think my
like two pool balls flying down on their own course. They hit into each other. They both alter a bit, but they then move off in their own directions, changed a bit, but still doing their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you flipped backwards and forwards there.
Yeah, I'm looking at the video stream, and I think that when I talk on the YouTube side, there we go. Now it's
correct. Before it was, the words were backwards for us.
Yeah. So okay, I was backwards this whole time.
Aha!
Yeah, it's always a.
So I guess my point is that since we've experienced it, and no one sat down in 2013 and said, 2020 is going to be an important election, so let's get ready for that, and let's do what we can to prepare. Right? We just said this was something that happened, and what can we do to facilitate it happening again if ever needed? Right? Like, wow, we had a lot of flood water here and it was necessary, but we don't need a lake here all the time. How do we get some aqueducts so when we need the water, it gets here quickly, and then it can quickly go back to doing its own thing? Like, how can we make this more efficient? And over the years, we've seen people come, and because there's been no mass issue or anything, except for maybe Hillary's election or potential election there, there wasn't a need for a resistance or a whatever, or there certainly hasn't been anything that brought everybody together. But since people have come and gone in this environment that we've created communally or whatever, like communitively, we've created a community that fosters new content creation and people that are activists to incubate here and grow and take skill sets and stuff and go. So we've seen that successfully happen. It's frustrating when we're at a time when we're probably going to see a need for everybody to come on board, all hands on deck. But how do we put the muster? Is that the right word? I'm not a Navy. How do you get the call out there so everybody brings all hands on deck?
Yeah, sadly, as I think we've all seen in doing this for a while, it always takes some kind of new tragedy for people to get passionate again, and then they start coming out and being real vocal. And that's the way. I think I've said this before in the past. Being a conservative means you want to protect what already exists. It doesn't mean that you want to change it. Not saying I'm a conservative necessarily, but a lot of people that are gun owners do, and they certainly are conservative in the sense that they want to protect what they already have. So they're out there enjoying their lives, being gunners, being enthusiasts, enjoying the hobby, enjoying the experience. But then when something creeps up that potentially threatens to take it away, that's when you get a lot of people coming out and speaking out against it, and you get a lot more of that activity. That's a lot of the reasons why the major gun coalitions and the legal movements, they always are looking for something that's on the horizon that's potentially going to threaten rights, because that's what keeps people motivated to be engaged. It's really tough to stay engaged all the time in a political type environment because it is exhausting. So anybody watching this, if you're really talking, if you're going out there and talking to people that are anti-gun, I appreciate you, because it's an exhausting process. Like, dealing with opposition all the time is tough. I mean, that's why Fox News and CNN and all these other different places exist, is because people want to go where they can feel comfortable. Your brain favors listening to people that speak to you on the terms that you like, the things you like to hear. And when you hear opposition, it bothers people. It really pisses them off. So that's why they seek that. And to be out there and to be in the forefront of it and constantly going, I appreciate that. It's a big effort.
I agree. We can't continually go, mentally at 100 miles an hour. We will become exhausted to the point of becoming totally ineffective and maybe counterproductive to our cause by trying to do that. We have to have periods of rest, recuperation, and then go back at it. And to use an example, although we talked about 2013 and gun channels and so forth, 2014 is when we had the green tip issue. And then possibly, there's a steel penetrator. Yes. Penetrator meaning armor piercing.
They're gonna kill everybody with the bullets. Right. You're gonna ban the AK-74.
Look at all the mass murders using the green tips.
Yeah, exactly.
But it does take certain things, just like it takes the antis a target of opportunity, i.e. a calamity, to get them fired up. It unfortunately takes a little bit of the same on our side as well, because neither side can run at 100% all the time.
Well, so that's where I will subtly disagree. And why I disagree is I again go back to, we're trying to conserve what we already have. The people that are against us technically are trying to erode what we have. They're on a crusade. And crusades are easier in the mindset, the mental brain, to embark upon in longer durations. So the people that are literally anti-gun, that are very anti-gun, they're in the crusade mode. They don't have a problem sacrificing themselves for a greater good. For us, we're just trying to conserve what we have and maybe make small inroads to get back rights that we have. Of course,
at its core, are you referring to an emotionally centered person?
Well, okay. Well, I don't even want to get into that.
I'm just thinking, because somebody who's, when you mentioned the crusade, somebody who's emotionally based, they don't need reason, logic, or any of that to get in the way. They can just charge because that's what they believe.
But again, you have to appreciate that there are people who look at our world right now and they're upset by everything around them. So everything around them bothers them. They're always in a state of stress. The only thing they can do is react politically or in whichever way, sometimes violently. So for us, we don't have that situation where we react and go, this is horrible. We sit down and go, wow, I really enjoy my life. I want to do more of this, enjoying my life that I've been enjoying. For us, it's harder to get us off of our butts because we enjoy our life. We are enjoying what we have. We're enjoying the freedoms that we have. But for the people that are in the opposition, they view that as bad. They view that as a horrible worldview and detracting from them personally. So they're every day is stress. They're stressed constantly, whether it's stressed in what they're doing actively. Maybe what they're doing actively gives very little stress, but what is in the back of their head is that they think the world is wrong and that they're a part of something that they have to fix. There is a book based on this. It's called The True Believer. It's a really good book if you can read it. And it's about communists and it's about fascism and Nazis. But if you read it, then you can draw parallels to a lot of different movements, mass movements. And this is a mass movement. It's a mass movement to take rights away from people.
It also almost sounds like you're referring, maybe just lightly, but proactive versus reactive groups and the energy required to maintain the energy within those two very different groups.
It's generally easier to be proactive because you never lose the footing, and if people drop out, there's always someone else to replenish them.
Define those systems. That's two kind of generic words. What's the differences there?
Yeah, so proactive is they have a mission, a goal, and they never stop until they achieve that mission. A reactive person is you don't need to do anything until you're threatened or there's a problem.
Yeah.
Like I'm reactive to when the water heater breaks. I don't have to do anything with the water heater until it explodes. I could be proactive and I could drain my water heater every 6 months and I'll get longer life out of it. And then I don't have to have the explosion in which I have to be reactive. Right. So I can prolong that by being proactive. But human beings are generally reactive beings. They don't want to do proactive tasks because that, again, takes them away from the freedom of being lazy and enjoying their
and it takes more energy. Again, being 100% again.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you tune your mind. I mean, if you live in a world where you have these goals that you want to achieve, like something like dumping the water heater every time I get to do it, I'm like, oh yay, I get to not have to deal with an exploding water heater in the future. And so,
I mean, it's a lot easier. I'm going to throw out another analogy. Let's say if I have a castle and it's very well built, so I can sit back and chillax 99% of the time. Occasionally, I sent out somebody to look beyond the gates to see what's happening out there in the forest, but for the most part, I can live a relaxing life. Okay, so I only need to react if somebody's at the gate storming. Okay, versus the people who live outside my kingdom who don't get to enjoy the benefits of my world have to have as their life mission storming the gates at some point during their life or their children's lives. If it's a longer term goal, that is the goal of, and the goal will never stop. It's multi-generational.
Right. And you know, you can only sit in your castle as long as your larders are full. And
Yes.
if your food supplies start to deplete, then now all of a sudden you become proactive. You're reacting, but in some cases you can become violently
I was just using
proactive.
another example, maybe a more visual one, or just a different one on the reactive versus proactive.
Right. Well, I mean, that's another way of looking at it.
Because if somebody's at the gate storming, you better do something.
Right.
Or you won't be in there.
I turned my alarm on. God. What's G-Web's working on? Oh, he's colorizing the van. Very cool.
Yeah.
Drawing a van, yeah. So I've been working on taxes and chatting all day, so I'm playing around.
I'm working on taxes. I'm going to send them this picture of my sweet, sweet van.
No, it's a 4x4.
Here's
van.
where the money went, guys. Here it is.
No, this is a 4x4 van I seen this weekend.
Very cool. Yeah, those 4x4 bands are sweet. Those are expensive. Yes, Seven Wonders, water heater exploding. I'm like 5 feet away from a 20-year-old water heater. You should probably dump that thing and clear the sediment out of that. You should
or at
probably
least
do that.
test the pressure valve.
And change the parasitic rod, or the sacrificial rod, as it's called, the anode.
I lived at a place once where the emergency copper pipe that came out only came out like six inches below the top. So if the valve blew and it did an emergency dump, it would dump this scalding water from like 4 feet in the air straight down off the concrete.
Oh, I'm talking about the sacrificial rod is different from the.
Oh yeah, that's like an anode.
Yeah, the anode. Yeah. A lot of people don't know about that. That's a really important thing to do with your water heater.
Yeah. You also use them to extend the life of gateways, like or what I think what do you call them?
Like the gateway computer system? Yeah.
No. For like when a ship's going in and out of a port or
a lock.
A lock, yes, locks and dams.
There you go. So you just need to give me a little bit of information. I can get there if you just give me a little bit.
And it has to do with corrosion of the steel and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you give it a metal that is easier for the water to corrode, and the water will focus on corroding that metal instead of the metal you want to protect. And that's why it's called a sacrificial rod or an anode. An anode is more based off of the base, the ground connection to the exterior metal.
But so the structural steel still is structural.
Yep. That's right. I mean, that's whew, science, man. That is imagine when that guy figured that out. Like, hey, if I put this weaker metal in with this stronger metal, it seems like the stronger metal lasts longer.
It's like sometimes someday we'll have to rebuild this thing, but let's make that later, not sooner.
Yeah, exactly.
So as you guys know, they built a new Panama Canal next to the old Panama Canal.
No, I did not know that.
I didn't either. It's already done already.
Now there's multiple canals in the Panama Canal. It's not just one. Did they rebuild numerous of them?
Well, now there's multiple because they built that other one, I guess.
There's always been multiple.
Well, now there's a second one that goes next to the main one.
I mean, because there's one on each coast, and then there's one going into that lake.
No, I'm not talking about in a row. I'm talking about parallel. They built another one next to it so that they could put bigger boats through.
Oh.
Yeah,
I mean, it was always more than one lock or whatever.
Yeah, could you imagine just the backup in the Panama Canal if that was what was going on? Well, we just got to the Panama Canal. We'll be through in 9 days.
Yeah. We just have to drain by the last 200 miles with the water.
All right. Well, so we've been going for a bit. Anything else we want to chat about tonight? Anybody got a gun shop?
I'm thinking about buying an LCR 357. I think that's going to be my next gun I buy.
I've been carrying one for a while. I'm a big fan.
The 357 specifically?
Yep.
Yeah, I got to shoot it, and I like Smith & Wessons, but there's something about that trigger on it, and just the how it's Hogue's, right? It's got Hogue grips.
Well, if it isn't, it's basically identical, but I think it is.
And it's a good carry revolver. I think that would be a good way to go. What? Somebody said, what? I had no idea, G-Webs, that you have a revolver? What? Of course he does. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he is the 9mm equivalent in a revolver.
A 357? What are you talking about?
No, you're a 38 special, mister. Don't bullshit me.
What's the
38 special in there?
What's the revolver you have? Is it a Hydra or something like that can take multiple rounds?
That was a Medusa.
Was that the Ruger?
No, a company called Medusa, I think.
Oh, okay.
It was that had like a little metal dealie that would allow you to put anything that was the same diameter could go in there, so it could head space off of the rim, so it could take anything. As far as
and it didn't require moon clips for the rimless cartridges, right?
Correct. It had like a little gizmo inside the cylinders.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That's a cool gun too. I still want a Cop though. That's one of the other ones that I want, but that's not a carry gun or a gun I would carry.
Yeah, they're a little heavy.
Well, G-Webs is perfecting his 4x4 van.
Yes.
Look at that line. Look at that new line.
He's a mad cartoonist.
Yeah, gives you something to do. So I'll go look and see if anybody's saying anything on the chats out there. Yep, they're all saying that it's a good gun.
Yep.
Put them on steel boats too. That's all that about.
It's like pretty inexpensive now because they've been out for a really long time. So.
Oh, Bob's talking about that.
Oh, what's up with Bob? Where's he at?
He's out in the chat.
Oh, I saw Angelina too. What's going on, guys? You don't hop on
anymore.
Oh man.
Oh, Angelina was in here yesterday. I think. Yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah, I was in bed yesterday. You were trying to shame me in here as I was lying in bed listening to the show.
Me too.
Yeah, I want to have a show every night, and I don't always have it in me. So I appreciate the people that jump in and help keep a conversation going. Had a little bit of discouraging news earlier today on that front, but we'll continue to keep reaching out to more activists all the time, and do as much as we can to facilitate effective communication and efforts going into 19. Anybody else want to say anything before we head out? I like Rupan's thing earlier. He said 99% of terrorists want more common sense gun control. I think that's an excellent thing for a meme or something.
I mean, we saw that with the New Zealand shooter. I mean, that's what he said exactly in his writing, that he used guns to make people panic and want gun control.
Yeah, terrorism works. Not only did they
literally
make buffoons of themselves, but they've literally emboldened every other terrorist in the world to just do something new. Yeah. So they could have chosen they literally chose the worst avenue they could have.
I also find it just ironic on that topic how maybe it's just that, you know, our American culture is intentionally blind, because I know they're told, but they don't retain. You know, they saw it, but they did not see, sort of a thing. What's going on in Europe and how well it's working out for them?
Well, I mean, if you read his novel or whatever that he wrote, a lot of his references were all Europe. They were all things that happened in Europe. Right or wrong or political, whatever. I mean, that's what he talked about. And it wasn't about America, although we have our own problems, obviously. It was about another country and the problems they're going through. And those countries largely have mass disarmaments of people. There's no polite society there. It's a society of brutalism.
I mean, between, you know, Brexit and the catastrophe that's going on there, and then you had the Yellow Vest protests that had been going on in various numbers, but nonstop now for a couple of months. Yet you would think from the American, you know, talking to the average Joe that, oh yeah, if they're aware of it at all, they thought it was something that happened once a couple of months ago. When in fact it happens, it's every day they're out there. It just, the difference is how many people.
Yeah, and that's the sad reality of this, is that the media is not out there. Well, there are some media that talks about that, and we aren't getting it, which is part of the problem, because we're not learning anything from it, right? It, as much as we've grown closer with our complex media and the ability to just reach out and touch people with Instagram and Twitter and all those other things we use, we're still in a world where the mass media movements, people don't, they're pandering to their bases. They're not going out there and being objective. There are people on Twitter that try to be objective, but again, those are individual people, and they're in their small little worlds, and you've got to go seek them. They don't have the necessarily wide reach as a lot of other people or entities, companies, corporate entities.
What surprises me is I have not had cable TV for probably going on 5 years. So my only source of news is the internet. Yet I seem to hear so many things going out around the world than the vast majority of people I talk to, and I can't figure out why.
Yeah, I haven't had cable since we moved into this house, and that was over 10 years ago. And I'm definitely better for it.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, just much like you don't really miss out on people talking about stuff. If anything, you're getting more of a real reaction. It's not a tailored reaction based off of what they want you to hear or think or whatever. You're getting a little fire hose treatment. You got to drink from the fire hose, but when you do that, you get a better understanding of what's going on, I feel.
I'm just wondering if you know, as you know, I'll call America as a society, do we have too many people who are literally looking at one news source, whichever one it is, but that's literally the only thing they ever look at?
Yes.
And they literally never listen nor hear it to anything else.
Yes.
Because then that would explain everything.
I mean, yes.
But I don't want that to be true, because that's such a negative thing on us as an American society.
Then wait wait 10 years. It's going to change, and it's all going to change in 10 years. It has to, because we're literally at the point where people are just bailing on standard media, or
your kids are. We're going to use them as an example because
Right.
You think they're going to even understand what it was like with NBC and ABC and CBS days?
I know they'll exist to some degree. Maybe I'm wrong.
No. I'm wondering if your kids are going to understand to be able to even fathom what it was like for us back in the day when there was 3 networks that dominated everything.
In that way, no, of course not. They're not
That's what
going
I'm
to
saying.
know
Like they're
anything
just
of
in
that.
such a different world.
Yeah.
So when people go, oh, blah blah blah, the kids are like, I'm like, they're not going to be handicapped by a lot of the stuff that we are dealing with. Like, oh, it's different now than it used to be. Like they don't know any different. So they're gonna. This is what what's going to be different to them is whatever's next compared to now.
It's just like millennials, and when we all were used to wired-based phones and had no cellular phones. It's like,
Right.
What do you mean you couldn't just pick up a phone and ask it, what's the weather in Toledo, Ohio, and get an answer immediately?
Yeah, exactly. Like they'll never know a world without that ability. Like they won't have to memorize the same kind of thing because they'll be aware of different levels of complexity now.
But I wonder if they'll also be handicapped by that because they won't think there's any other avenues of getting that information. If they think, oh, my phone or whatever the device is of the future, that system or thing is the only way to get information. Without that, we're just crippled in the streets.
No, you're assuming that because Google today is Alexia or whatever today is the interface, that's like, you think they'll be crippled by AOL? Well, no, because AOL will be long gone. By the time Hosh's kids who are young are old enough to be playing with their own phones and stuff, Alexia's will be fun of that.
The interface is the point. I mean, that's how you communicate with humans, is via voice.
I don't care. I'm saying Alexia, the thing that you're talking about today, will be like the MySpace. They'll be laughing about how we had a little hockey puppet we talked to or something.
No,
like
there won't be a hockey puck. I never said Alexia. I'm just saying when we ask the system, whatever that is.
Yeah, I'm saying, why do you think the system is going to be anything like today? They're going to be laughing about that concept by the time they're actually asking something.
You don't think that there'll be voice communication between the various systems and the humans?
Who the hell cares, dude? You're talking about as if when they ask it, who cares how they ask it? You're suggesting, your premise is that the answer they're going to get is from Alexia or from Google. And I'm saying that will be the thing of the past. Like they won't have just one computer robot to ask a thing to. They will be able to decide who to ask, therefore get the question appropriately to what they want. They'll have nuance. We're dealing with the beginning baby steps of AI. So we have Google and Alexia. Who knows what is going to be in the future, but it's certainly not going to be Google and Alexia only.
I never said it was. I've tried to make that clear.
I actually, it could go bad, and it could just be a more of continuation of what we already have, which, your phone has Google on it, or your phone has Bing, or your phone has whatever the current search engine is. If you don't break out of that and actually want to do that, then you're going to get served up the hits based off of your searches, right, that they want you to see. So that could happen, and that's happening now, and that feels like a trend that's going to last for at least 5 years if there isn't a big bucking of that trend. So who knows? That could have long staying power. I really don't know the answer to that one. That's a bigger question. That's a much larger question. I'd like to believe that we won't have our heads up our asses and be like, wait, why am I, I got to look a little deeper. But, who knows? I've been wrong many times.
Well, a lot of that is, though, that we all want this better technology, and we all want this internet that is as fast as it can be and as great as it can be, and everybody can get to everything, but nobody wants to pay for it. Okay? Let's be real. That's why, they talk about the net neutrality and stuff like that. Nobody wants to pay for access to Google. Nobody wants to pay for access to Yahoo. So how do they fund themselves? By selling ads. How do they sell ads? The most effectively by finding out what people want. And getting that to the advertisers. Well, how do you do that? You have to collect information. So I mean, you can call it evil all you want to, but it's really not so much as that's kind of the circle that it's went to.
No, I don't call it evil. I call that a natural progression of business capitalism.
Yeah. Yes,
but understand that they are serving. So when you search for something, they are serving you the things they want you to see. Right. There's obviously not one guy who's like, ha ha ha, I will send him the things that will be anti-gun. But that does exist to a certain level. It's a part of whatever algorithm that they have on. There is something that works that way, right? And they will try to capitulate to the people that they have money coming in from, which we have to expect that. I mean, that we are all smart enough to understand how capitalism works. So you can't be surprised that they're doing this.
Then why do we have so many people on the other side that don't want to discuss facts and only want to discuss emotions?
Well, there's other people.
The facts don't work for them, dude. If the facts work for them, I bet you they would be talking about facts. But since the facts are not going to work, they have to appeal to something else. We talked about this on Ghost Show before, and I don't know if it's worth bringing up. If you guys want to dig into it, but I suggest that one of the reasons we see the just gross, crazy suggestions, especially today, we just saw some of the craziest, unobjected to lies. I think it's an indication that their grasp is slipping. They know it, and they're doing anything, Hail Marys, anything they can do at this point, no matter how bizarre or crazy or dumb, because they know that in a few years they'll have no ability to reach people the way that they've had historically. And if they can manipulate this one last time, then they get a big score, and they got nothing at all to lose.
Yeah. I wish that I could manipulate the vector arm the way you do. I'm watching you right now, and that's the most zen.
Yeah, it takes a little while to get used to it, and then
you're really good at it. You've gotten really good at it. The way, I was like, oh, so you just cut the line like that. I didn't even really think about that. I'm like, oh man, that's really smooth.
Yeah.
So watch G-Web's upcoming vector graphics tutorial.
That's what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. Anytime somebody wants to know, it'd be great to have more duet cartoonists get some more voice out there. But I don't know. I know people challenge that and say that we're not, looking at a dying last grasps of a huge beast that can't survive in the future because it was based on stuff that's foundations that are gone. And the people say, I don't know, they'll challenge that. So I don't know. Maybe wants to get into all that, but
I just don't know that it won't be what we know it as. It'll be something else. It's always going to be something else.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And we know from looking, we can know the future by looking at the past, and the change is inevitable as it's been proven.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be some other. That's why I was always like the search engine thing is kind of a weird thing because it's, it's and right now.
That's why I use the term system. I tried not to use the word device. I mean, now how it gets its input, it could be a button, impregnated in our clothing. Who knows?
Well, it'll be something different, I'm sure. Yeah. I know what it is, though.
What gets me, though, is everybody's talking about all these, hockey puck things that you buy in your house. And yes, I do have a couple in my house. But I get to thinking about that. They really don't do anything that your smartphone hasn't been capable of doing for the last 2 or 3 years now.
Exactly.
It's just kind of something permanently mounted on the wall that's always there, but you could carry your phone around and accomplish the same thing pretty much. Yep. So as far as something listening to you, it's been listening to you for a while. And no, it's not trying to capture all your evil thoughts and your stuff like that. It's just trying to tell you stuff.
And that's where I think, regardless of what you think about the individual, Snowden did a lot of awakening of people's consciousness as to what might be going on, and for some people confirming what they thought was going on, regardless of what you feel about that individual. And I think that tells us a lot of what the government is willing to do when there is no transparency and and they have that level of power to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If they can, they will, regardless of what the law says. And if that means they need to twist the arm of the various infrastructures and providers and various things to make it happen, then that's what they'll do. That's what they've done. I mean, it used to be considered, well, you must be a tinfoil hatter to say some of the things that we now know from Snowden. Doesn't that sound crazy? I mean, to say some of the things that he said in the early 2000s, you would say, "Oh, you are nuts."
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a weirder discussion to go down. I don't know that I'm ready for that discussion.
Well, no, I mean, with the assumption of what he's saying has some validity to it. With that assumption, to have said those things in 2000 and say them as, well, this is absolute fact, people would have looked at you like you were nuts.
What are we talking about anyway? Like tech that was available at the time?
No, the NSA activities over private citizens.
That's what I mean, like what they were able to do and what they were listening to and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, we didn't successfully end the show earlier, so let's see if anybody's adding into this conversation.
I didn't know that was the goal.
Oh, I mean, I don't care. I'll keep the show going all night. I'm going to be sitting here driving this van for a while. We have 19 people watching. We have 13 thumbs. There's 7 criminals. No, one thing. Oh, there's 7 criminals because one of them snuck out, or one of them's watching twice. I don't know however that works out in the math.
They're on the phone.
Let's see. You can still thumb on a phone.
Yeah, they got to click an extra thing. They're just so lazy. They're just not ready to click. I don't know what it is. I don't know. They should click.
Let's see. I don't know about Dano, but nothing is going to impregnate me no matter how much they give me.
Okay. What do you mean you don't know about me?
Pink.
Oh, Pink.
Oh, Pink wrote that. Okay.
All right. Well, so noticed you. Where'd you go to someplace? You did say you were on the 50th floor.
No, I was joking. I was on the 9th floor. I said 90th, but that's not where I was at. I was on the 9th floor, just playing around with radio at night before everybody went to bed.
And how did that work inside of a building but up high?
Horribly. Okay. That is not preferred.
You were in a giant, what do you call it?
Faraday cage.
Faraday cage, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of these big buildings are all steel manufactured, so you get a lot of noise. It basically kills everything in the hotel, and you can't.
That's what I kind of figured. So I was wondering if you had some sort of way to negate that or something. But okay.
I was using antennas that were a little bit better designed to get out, but I was only pushing about 5 watts, which is not very much. So I was able to receive some of the big stations out of my window that was facing towards New Mexico. And oddly enough, I picked up a New Mexico station, a powerful New Mexico station. But, that's kind of par for the course.
Now, you're talking station, but are you talking ham or are you talking radio, regular radio?
Yeah, ham radio station. Okay. Station is kind of works in both ways.
So now, when you go to these places on vacation, you bring your stuff. Do you bring a scanner and just listen to the hotel staff and stuff, or you don't bother with that?
No, I don't really bother with that. I have 2 meter, 70 centimeter radios I bring that I can listen to, but I don't spend much time with that. I guess it would be smart if you were a little bit more security OPSEC minded than I am to listen to that. So you could see, oh man, something's going on. We got to get out of here. If there's a fire on the 3rd floor and we're on the 9th floor, hell yes, let's book out. That would be valuable.
Or at least something like be aware of their frequencies. So if you had to, you could jump over, or I guess you can just scan to them.
Yeah. That's a good point, because obviously a lot of these frequencies that they operate on are not amateur radio frequencies. They're operating on FRS, GMRS, or commercial radio of some kind. So it's likely that even if I found them, that they would not be not necessarily receivable. I could probably receive them, but I would not necessarily be able to transmit.
What? Hams can't transmit on FMRS?
Not legally, no. Well, so you can use an FRS radio to transmit on FRS, but you can't use an amateur radio to transmit on FRS. It has too much power.
I was going to say, I thought you just said to dial down the power.
No, the radio itself is not legally allowed to transmit there. You can, I mean, if at that point it's kind of like, well, why bother with lowering the power? Just use it if the way you have it. But no, it's technically not legal in the FCC's eyes. But in an emergency, who cares, right?
Okay.
Actually, in an emergency, you are allowed to.
That's why I said
Yeah,
the FCC views it as illegal, but in an emergency, who cares?
Literally, that's most ham stuff is like, don't do this unless it's an emergency.
Right, yeah. If it's an emergency, do whatever you want. You can receive to your heart's content. If you bring a scanner and you listen to everything, go for it. If you like doing that, heck yeah, do it.
Well, normally in society, when we say, and nobody cares, we just mean everybody but the government.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
In this case, we mean literally everybody, including the government.
Indeed.
All right, well, so I went up to that Big Sandy machine gun shoot over the weekend, and then I wasn't sure what to, I wasn't even sure if I should go. So I consulted some of the people that were in the chat last week and decided to go. And then I'm cheap. So I'm also, well, I'm cheap. And then, well, I guess it's just being cheap. So I drove, 5.5 hours north and a little bit west to get there. And I really didn't feel like driving the same 5.5 hours right back because it seems like a waste of time to drive all the way up there, right? So I really wanted to go to Vegas just because that's the closest thing up there, but I really had no reason to go to Vegas. So I was there and I was looking at a map basically and said, hey, you know what? I've never been to Laughlin. So I ended up going to Laughlin.
Oh, okay.
Have you ever been to Laughlin?
Oh, yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, it's really different.
An area where you can observe the runways?
Runways?
No.
Yeah, Laughlin Air Force Base.
Yeah, no, there's runways there. I guess you could. I didn't really think about that, but yeah, I guess you can.
Air Force Base there? I didn't know about it, I guess.
It's kind of like, I mean, people kind of call it the low rent Las Vegas, and it's the Las Vegas on the river. So there's kind of a river activity going on in the summer months. It's great because you could technically partake in both, and there's ways to do that. But if you're just a casino junkie, they're fine. You know, they're all right.
Yeah, I was also thinking, I'm going to go to Laughlin because number one, I hadn't been there, and then I'm going to go drop $20 in a slot machine or something. You know, you never know when you're lucky, and that's how I usually do it. I'll take $20 and do something, right? And then blackjack or whatever I feel like, and then I figure if you're lucky and you're going to win with $20. I don't need to sit there with $500 and play some kind of system or something weird. So, you know, I just drop $20, and if I win something, I win something, and I walk away. So, totally forgot to do that. I went there. The street, it's just one street. Like you said, it's like there's the river, tiny. There's a little street, and there's like maybe 5 hotels, 4 or 5, I don't know. There's a couple of hotels. They're like Harrah's and stuff, but tiny versions of Vegas ones. I went there during the day, so I don't have any idea what it looks like at night. It might look kind of nice at night, but
not
there's
really.
Like there's jet skiing. Well, I mean, with the like fancy Vegas type of neons and stuff. I couldn't really tell how light it gets up. But anyway, just a neat little experience, and then went south from there into California. So I went into California this weekend and had to disarm for a bit. Went through, I forget, like maybe an hour or something into California, or through California, kind of down the river. Probably not even that long. And then back into Arizona, and then down to Lake Havasu, and then Parker, Arizona. So it's kind of neat. I'd highly recommend it if you ever find yourself looking for something to drive around and you're in Vegas or in Phoenix or something, or maybe even California. I don't know how far that is from you. Probably 5 hours. Just interesting terrain, though, worth seeing. And then right now, it's all super colorful with purple and yellow wildflowers everywhere. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've been to Havasu. Havasu's pretty cool, too. And I mean, it's Havasu's kind of a excuse me. Havasu's kind of a destination for, you know, water type stuff. So you generally want to go
jet skis, yeah.
Yeah, you want to go with somebody that has like a boat. Boats are awesome in Havasu, obviously, because jet skis are great, but they're not great to hang out on all day, kind of thing.
Sunburn.
Well, you'll get that no matter what.
Yeah, it's Arizona. And then some fishing, I guess. But just driving was really neat. I found a gun show down there. I found a new range. Well, range. I hadn't been in that area ever, so I've seen a range, and then a couple of gun shops, and pretty little adventure. So I was going to throw that out there if anybody wanted to chat about that. And otherwise, we can try to wrap it up again, I guess.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Huh.
That at the night shoot, were there at least at periods of time a couple of guns that were shooting at bursts of nothing but tracer rounds?
Oh, heck yeah. Definitely.
Okay, because I don't typically
Oh,
we're
you mean-
1 out of 4, 1 out of 5.
Oh, no, I see what you're saying. No, probably not. I don't think so. It's possible.
But there were sometimes that between the gaps, I could swear that they had to be one tracer right after another.
Well, that's when you start getting into some really quick stuff, like those, what do you call them? Miniguns, man. They're fast. Like, they shoot a lot of ammo. So that's 6 barrels. So if every other third barrel, I think, is that what they do, has a tracer in it, then, I mean, they're just shooting incredibly fast. There's just a lot of lead going down range. But I don't, that's a good point. I guess I don't know. I didn't ask anybody
I
specifically.
wonder if are the tracers more expensive? Because it seems like visually it'd be a lot more entertaining.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, though. But who cares when you're doing a recreational shoot twice a year? Maybe you are going to put all tracers in, because you're certainly not. I mean, I don't know what they do in the military, if it's a cost thing or if there's some reason to have it every 5th or 3rd or whatever it is.
Well, yeah.
What?
There's a reason.
Yeah.
Well, it had to do with night fire. And typically, like your squad leader would have one magazine of nothing but tracers, and if he wanted to direct you where to fire, so it was clear, and then you could get a better idea as to where your rounds were going, because you're basically shooting at dark spaces at 500 plus meters out.
Oh, see, I didn't do nothing like that, so I have no idea what you're talking about there. That's neat. But
I mean, they're not more effective than a standard ball as far as what they do. It just, they're easy to see at night. And of course, you don't want them all, because then the enemy can visually walk backwards to where you are.
no, that's the thing, though. That's what I was going to say. I don't think when they put them in like a plane or in a belt or something, and it's like every 3rd or 5th or whatever it is, it's not as though, like, I mean, you're still seeing a stream of red going right to the gun. It's not like it's hiding the gun somehow or something if it's everything. I think it's just they don't need them, and they didn't. It was just a waste or something, I guess. It must have been cost, but I have no idea really.
When I only know the little bits and pieces that I know, but like with the M60, that's how you aim it at nighttime. You fire in the general direction, and then like a garden hose, you walk the hose, or in this case the line, the tracers into the target zone.
Yeah, but you're not shooting 100% tracers. You're shooting like every 3rd a tracer, right?
Right. It was every 4th or 5th round. This is decades and decades ago. But
I don't know what the ratio is or why they decided to do it every 3 instead of every 1 or whatever is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I just curious if there was a cost.
You don't get much more out of it by putting them more in, because the cycle rate is going to be so fast that you're still going to get almost a solid line coming out, the garden hose effect, with 4 rounds, 6 rounds, whatever. It's the cycle rate of the gun. It's like you're blowing money needlessly. You know what I mean?
But it's the government. That's why me and Dana were like, I can't imagine why it has anything to do with money, because what do they care? I bet you.
Right. Well, yeah.
Barrel, but think about barrel length, life. I'll bet you if you shoot nothing but tracers and all that phosphorus going off, it just makes you have to clean your barrel more often, I bet.
That, and literally, it's like, I mean, there's going to be the manufacturing process for a tracer is going to be more involved than a regular round. Even I mean, I don't know how they produce them. I don't know if they paint the phosphorus on after or they paint it on the projectile. But if they paint it on the projectile, then the loading is going to be a separate process.
Well,
That
it's
they
not
have to clean the dyes. You know, who knows? What?
It's not painted. It's a whole bunch. They'll drill. It's like a backwards hollow point. They'll just drill a big hole in the back of the projectile. And they fill it with some kind of liquid, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't know. So I'll leave it to you guys. But it's definitely cost. So, you know.
Very rarely do you see the government ever concerned about cost.
That's all I'm saying. Is, yeah, they don't give a shit about cost, dude. I mean, they care every once in a while, but not when it's like, I bet you it's more like maintenance on the gun. And like,
they care in weird ways. Like if you don't use the allotted number of rounds at the end of a session, they'll have you sit there and just, okay, everybody keep firing. Just practice your aim. We're just going to do some additional rounds here because they have extra rounds, and if they bring them back, then there's a process of rechecking this ammunition back in that they don't have to do if it's all gone. As well as they won't get their allotted sum for that next exercise next time it comes in rotation.
Sure, but
time it was mainly just didn't want to drag it home. Like, well, you can either carry that home or you can shoot more of it. So it's like, all right, let's start shooting.
But I mean, if you think about it in practical terms, cleaning the gun is a cost too. That's an armor that's not doing something more.
Well, no, we have to clean our own guns.
Not necessarily with phosphorus, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, it just depends. I mean, you turn in your gun to an armorer, but let's just say if you turned in a gun to an armorer dirty, you're a fucking idiot. You never did that. So
yeah,
we
always had cleaning sessions after every range visit.
You would pay for that. If
you got enough grunts complaining about it that they're like, you know what? Let's just go to 4 rounds. Let the 3 other bullets clean out the barrel.
Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. That's more practical. I wouldn't say it's cost-minded. That's just practicality then.
Yeah, like
also,
I said,
you don't get much more bang. You don't get a better benefit out of it by having it more due to the cycle rate most of the time.
Anyway, my question was only in regards to the shoot and it be visually more fascinating. I mean, it's already fascinating, but it's like, how do you take it?
Now that you're saying that, I would not put that past it at all. I'm going to talk to the dude again and see if he'll do another interview, kind of an after action. So now that people have seen it and have maybe specific questions or like that. And I'm curious, like how many people showed up this year. You can ask him if he knows, because that's the kind of thing that maybe nobody's said anything, but he's like, oh yeah, they upload like double tracers or something. You know, who knows what they're going to say.
Yeah.
All right, well, so yeah, there's a fan I've seen up there, and it was pretty cool. So just drawing a picture of it. All right.
I see somebody's got a short man with that little booster chair to get in.
Yeah, this was a couple. They were kind of camping in it. I don't know if that top thing, see that thing on top there, could be a camper that, like a tent thing that opens up. Some of those
pretty
things.
Thin.
Yeah, but it's a hard cover. It's like a Tonto cover. So it seems like it's something that accordions up. And anyway, so then there's 4 racks on it. So it's meant to hold some weight. So anyway, it was, let me go back and look at some pictures. I got them on Instagram if anybody's seen them. Where the hell's my Instagram? Gear. So anyway, I just asked him if it was okay to take some pictures because it was a really cool van. So that's the little step van, or little step stool, and then that's the other side of the front, and the big extra tire that kind of swung out.
Oh, I think you're right. Now I see that picture. Yeah, that might pop up. That might do something. That's not a rack. That's not like a Baja rack.
No, there's more to it. So I think it's maybe something. And there's a ladder. So they have a substantial ladder going up to it.
Yeah.
Definitely this thing. But then I don't know if you saw this. They got this stairs.
What about a viewing platform? Like put stairs up there at night?
Could be like like I was thinking like a pop-up type of, like you're saying, like a place. Because sometimes people do that on these vehicles. So you park out in the middle of nowhere and you get up in the air, basically.
Right. And then have your little party watching the sun go down and the stars at night. And
fire off your 100% tracer round magazine into the air.
And this was a person who was up there shooting. So yeah, they were up there shooting NFA stuff. And then there's also this big box. You don't really get to see it, but the back on the other side of the door there's really not a good picture of it. You can kind of see it here. It's sort of a big outside type of box that's weatherproof. I don't know what for, just extra storage, I guess. Anyway, it was a couple in there, and they had You don't really see it in the pictures. I tried not to take pictures, but you could see they were back here, like to the left of this picture, set up like a pop-up roof, and were set up like a little camp in there. So I'm guessing they camp out of this van. Like maybe they sleep in there, but they do their kitchen and stuff outside.
Yeah, I am a big. Somebody mentioned in the chat that's a Power Stroke diesel. Yeah, those diesel 4x4 vans are awesome, man. Those things are money though, big money. To get one kitted out like that, that is not cheap.
He said it took him 3 years so far.
Yeah, that's those diesel vans are. I mean, a lot of people get, you know, donor vans and then they swap in the diesel, and that's a whole, you know, other process to be able to do something like that. That's crazy time.
Here was me doing some or off-road adventures. I did.
There you go.
I didn't need that 4x4. I was able to get through this even with my 2-wheel drive.
Did the pollywogs get out of the way before you forded the river?
It was tough. It was adventure.
Did you test it to see how mushy it was before you drove in there, or just decided, well, if I go up to the axle, I go up to the axle?
Oh God!
No, this was the road in. I just coming out of it, so it was a known road. I just figured I'd stop there because it was about the closest thing I could get to picture. Now this is the movie Lone Wolf McQuade, and this is a scene in the movie Lone Wolf McQuade at the 11-minute 30-second mark. Bam! That van just got rear-ended because of that son of a bitch in a car. So we're playing that again. Bam! That van just got rear-ended. Documented in this movie. Here it is. Bam! The van gets rear-ended. It pushes forward, and the van's like, "That's a Texas Ranger freaking in the road. Quit pushing me into the road." So I noticed that in the movie, and I pulled it out and put it on Instagram.
That almost looks like Tilt Shift. That whole picture.
What's that?
Tilt Shift. It's like where everything looks like it's a miniature.
Huh. It does look like it's a miniature, but this is just a picture from probably one of the things there. All right, well, so that was the show. Let's see if anybody's saying anything. One last time.
Going once, going twice.
I'm going streaming on Friday. Come talk to me on Ham Radio if you want to talk Ham Radio. Ham Radio Crash Course on YouTube.
Always a good time. And on the Patreon, you get the newsletter, all kinds of things to learn.
In fact, next week, first week of the month is always patron pick. So the topic of the month will be based off of what they want. And they're picking something that I've got to go do a lot of research on, I think is what's going to happen. So should be fun.
Right on. If it's easy, then it's no fun.
Yeah, if it's easy, you won't do it.
Woods, you still in here?
Yeah, what's up?
Oh,
you bet.
We talked to 2 hours ago about, we're just on quickly because no one's showing up, and we're both tied. So here we are.
How's your squeaky chair going there, Woods?
That's a puppy.
Oh, I just heard.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
I was like, if it isn't a puppy, then what the hell is he doing on that chair? And then thanks to Gary for jumping in for a bit. Gary's show is on Fridays also. And thanks everybody for joining and showing up and listening. And we'll talk to you later or next time.
Take it easy.
Okay. Well